Short and sweet and to the point. That's what I like. It is Live Talk with Becky Chernek. And boy, let me tell you, I do have a great featured speaker with us tonight. His name is Brooks Weber. But before we go there, for those that are new to this channel, I am Becky Chernek. And I think I have been providing the very best in finance and insurance training for automotive dealers throughout the USA. And sometimes you can find me in Canada. So here's what I do. I work with dealers from the time that that customer lands on that dealership website, working with that BDC department, working with salespeople, yay, because that's where it starts too, and also working at the desk and making sure those deals are all coming together. And Brooks and I are going to have that conversation tonight, how those deals come together. And then we wrap it up. I wrap it up with finalizing that transaction in the F&I office with a single point sales associate or a designated F&I manager. So I make impact that sticks. So welcome again to Live Talk with Becky Chernek. Brooks Weber, it is a pleasure to have you on tonight, and talk to us first about your vast automotive retail experience. Let's do it.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me. And as you know, we've talked in the past, but not on your show. And I'm a follower and a big fan of yours, and I always enjoy just the subjects that you explore and constantly trying to chase all the innovation and the evolution of the car business. So it's a pleasure to be here.
Well, thank you. And we have Richie Bello, I think, in the audience here saying hello. Richie, it's always a pleasure too, because I know he loves this kind of conversation when we're talking about what should we be doing as far as desking deals sooner rather than later, meaning, getting to that credit criteria earlier on in the process, way before maybe even that deal makes its way to the desk. So you're going to, okay, so I want to talk a little bit about your background, because I think it's so important dealers understand that you're a dealer people too, because, I think for reasons, it's important to make sure that even when you're a vendor, you have had retail experience. And I got to tell you, you have some vast retail experience, right? So talk to us about that first.
Thank you for that. Well, without dating myself too much, I've got almost 30 years, 70,000 hours in the retail trenches, the variable ops trenches, about 8,000 personal closes. And I started out in used car sales at a couple of large volume Ford and Chevy stores in the state of Michigan. And just, as the business evolved and some opportunities presented themselves, I went in, I transitioned into sales management. And at the height of my career, I was a variable ops manager of 7 stores. But I've done, I've had extensive experience in desking and sales management, both in new car and pre-owned. And I've done backup F&I, pretty much whatever was called for on any given day in a busy store. But other than my years in the military, I started out as a lot porter at a Detroit Ford store on Woodward Avenue, and which was a service porter. And the car business has been very, very good to me. I've sold through labor and transportation strikes and wars and hostage crises and recessions and natural disasters that affected the supply chain. But it's always been very, very good to me.
Yeah, so I can almost say the same thing, although I've never been in. You're a veteran, is that right?
I am.
mean,
Yeah.
that's
Yes.
what I thought. So how many years were you in the military? Is that
active and reserve
infiltrating?
service, 15 years in the Army.
Wow, yeah,
And
even before
and
you got into the car business.
Yeah, I came back from my initial active service to a recession going on in Detroit, and at that time, young men like myself that were trying to enter the job market and looking forward to a good factory job at GM, Ford, Chrysler. Well, all of a sudden we were competing with our fathers who were laid off. So it was a strange time in the economy, challenging time in the economy. And I had a good friend that I had played ball with, and he had gone to work in sales in the big Ford store and transitioned into F&I. And he said, "Hey, this is what you need to consider." So I did.
And there you are. So here's what's interesting, for me, I kind of grew up in the car business a little bit there. I kind of cheated. My dad had a Cadillac and Pontiac dealership. So you can certainly say I earned my wings from my father, but unfortunately, he passed away at a very young age due to lung
Sure.
cancer. And a lot of people don't know about that. But so out of all the siblings in the family, there's the black sheep. I decided I'm going to stay in the car business, and I'm going to go sell cars. And everybody's like, "Who do you think you are selling cars? You're a female." And I'm like, "I'm going to do it anyway." And and then later I sold cars for a Ford dealership there. So we have a lot in common there. And then
Yeah.
Ron Bortnick promotes me into F&I, and I thought, "Oh my God, this is me. I am made for F&I. Boy, I've got this. I own this deal." And my life and my career in F&I takes off. So I certainly appreciate those times in Ford. We had a freaking blast. And so what year would it be that you got involved in Ford? What year was that?
Oh, well,
It was 20 some
almost,
years ago,
I'd say
right?
about 20, I'd say about 28 years ago. So the
Yeah.
first Ford store I worked for was Battle Creek Ford, which at the time was the second largest volume used car retailer in the state of Michigan. Also it was one of the early subprime stores, one of the early, CAC, GNAC, partners. And mostly because of the economy that came out of the 80s and went into the to the 90s. So yeah, that was my first experience. Because I had prior to working in a store, I had worked for a retailer and wholesaler in Metro Detroit. And at that time, we had, we maybe retailed 40 to 50 cars off our lot on Woodward Avenue, but we wholesaled about 300. So we had a phone room with a team of people that were combing all the for sale by owners all around the Midwest. And we went out in crews of guys and bought those cars out of customers' driveways. And that dealer that I worked for went on to become a very successful Cadillac dealer. His name was John Lund. So Lund Cadillac in Arizona. He became a very successful dealer. But I had more than the average experience with pre-owned cars the first time I ever went into an A franchise store. So that's really where I began my career. And until I transitioned into sales management, I was a pre-owned salesman.
Yeah, well, I have a lot of respect for that because I feel like my dad was probably one of the best when it come to pre-owned vehicle and really understanding that market inside and out. And all those times, all those kitchen conversations, I learned a whole heck of a lot.
Yeah,
Hold back on the trade, Becky. Whatever you do, you just hold on that
sure.
trade, whatever it takes. So I want to talk about the reason again why we're here tonight because
Sure.
jumpstart, here we are in 2000, where are we? 2022,
Sure.
2023. We now have an affordability crisis here in the United States. 2008, we had a financial crisis. I mean, it hit. I know it was
Mhm.
painful for
Yep.
me. Right? I don't know where you were in 2008, but I know for me, it was really kind of tough getting those dealers to go ahead and hire me
Sure.
to bring me into their stores to provide training. So here we
Sure.
are, and now we're at a place. It's really interesting for, since this pandemic hit with COVID, and talk about, I mean, just it was so crazy. And then here we are 2 years into this, dealers are making more profit than they ever made before in
Sure.
um, history. And so now we're looking at, well, things are changing again and seasons change. David Anderson had said how many times seasons change.
Sure.
So now we're dealing with interest rates are rising. And payments and these vehicle pricing isn't necessarily going down. So,
Sure.
how are customers affording payments? Is it better for customers, for salespeople, even to or customers to have the flexibility to be able to determine these payments in
Sure.
advance rather than letting the customer come on the wrong car and then getting them off the car to get them on the right car. How do you
Sure.
see this whole thing playing out?
Well, first of all, what you described, I mentioned all the events and challenges that I've sold through, but I think the last couple of years has kind of been unprecedented. And I think one of the challenges we're going to have going forward is that business has been so robust that our industry kind of stopped looking at it as a marathon, and they embraced the sprint, you know. So they haven't necessarily been visionary about, what's to come. And I don't want to speak for everybody, but I just think that a lot of the way I see car dealerships operated right now in the sales process and the way business is being transacted, um, they're really not taking a look at the 10,000-foot view of where we're going to be at in 2 years, because and you and I have talked a little bit about refinancing opportunities, and if they're not thinking about that now, and if the captives and the banks and the credit unions aren't thinking about that now, they're going to have a rude awakening in a couple of years, because regardless of what happens with the chip shortage, we're going to have people that are going to be in positions like they were in back in 2000, 2007, 2008, where they were $8,000, $10,000, $12,000 negative. And with the economy as it is, and with the changing affordability based on inflation and just the cost of living, everything involved, no matter how attractive we try to make it, will people they be in a position and be able to afford to trade their cars? That's really the question. And knowing that, how do we make the transition in the business now to prepare for that in those 2 years?
Okay, so I am with you. So here's the thing. I recently I wrote an article, and hopefully it comes out soon. And I am talking about unconventional solutions in unconventional times.
Hmm.
And I think it is so important for dealers to start thinking outside this box. I mean,
Sure.
whatever the box is, I don't even know what that is anymore. And being able to have different types of solutions that they can offer a customer to assure that the customer can afford the payment. So
Sure.
locking a customer down or putting a customer down on a wrong car to from the beginning, and then trying to get them off to put them on something else, and all the friction, all the time it takes to do that.
Hmm.
And it just doesn't it's just doesn't it's not it doesn't work. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about the refi option. And I know it like goes against everything we've ever been taught in this industry. We don't do refinancing, Becky, don't you know? And I get it, because we don't want to break lender agreements. I get that. I'm the one born yesterday.
Hmm.
We don't want to break lender agreements. However,
Hmm.
we can almost, if you will, circumvent that situation, be
Hmm.
able to offer and participate in offering that customer the opportunity to refinance their
Hmm.
existing auto loans so they can afford the new car payment.
Yeah.
Why
Well,
doesn't that make sense?
there's always the difference between what we want to do and what we have to do. And in an earlier conversation, you and I talked about adapt or perish, change
Yeah.
or perish. So I think what you're describing, I'm a fan of history. There's a lot of lessons in history, and I think what you're describing actually was part of the process. Um, 20 years ago in the car business, where we were putting customers on the wrong cars, we weren't pre-qualifying them well, and we didn't know how to interview well. Um, and if you were a skilled salesperson back then, you needed to know how to qualify the customer between the store and the lot when you were walking them out to test drive a car. I mean, that's the 10 minutes you had, not only to feature and benefit the car, but to qualify the customer, because a salesperson didn't have access to a credit bureau. So, from through history, I know why it worked poorly back then. I don't think it's going to work now. Not to mention the newer generations of buyers, they're wired completely differently. So I just don't think it's a process that they'll embrace.
Is it, are you saying, I'm confused. Okay.
I'm
So are
sorry.
you saying that customers don't understand the benefit to refi? Or are you saying
No.
dealers don't understand the benefit of offering refi or
Well,
assisting a customer to refi? What
so
I don't think I get
so
that.
yeah, I apologize. What I'm saying to you is what you described about landing the customer on the wrong car and how that
Okay.
takes place in the process. That took place in the process 20 years ago, and it was a process that customers didn't enjoy, right?
It's
So
still right.
yeah, I don't think that's changed, and I don't think the newer generation of buyers that wants a more transparent, frictionless sales process, all right, I don't think they're going to embrace that either. So if you've got an antiquated sales process
I
that
agree.
isn't focused on giving the newest generation of buyers, those things, those elements, then I don't think you're going to sell cars the same way. There's going to be a lot of challenges. So if you're not willing to adapt, and refi is one of these areas that I think, we're going to have to be forced to adapt to, whether or not we want to break those agreements, whether or not we see the same profitability in it. But let's face it, the struggle is going to be in retention at that point, right? Because somebody's going to be out there offering options, right? In challenging times, people get creative, they get innovative. So if your store isn't thinking through it, if your store isn't making those adjustments, then your retention is going to suffer. You're going to lose customers.
Well, yes, yes, yes. So that's the thing. So we have to be as competitive as even 20 years ago. So 20 years ago, it's kind of funny. Maybe not 20 years. I don't know how many years it's been, but it's been a bit. And I remember working at a Toyota dealership in Annapolis, Maryland. Hey guys from Annapolis. And at the time, I was doing subprime at this Toyota dealership in Annapolis, Maryland. And fact, it's kind of funny, but they called me Wonder Woman. And I know my intro video is Wonder Woman. And that's probably one of the reasons why I thought it was kind of fun to put it up. But at the time, it was called Wonder Woman. She'll get your deals approved. And of course, everyone and their mother said, there's no way you could do subprime credit here in Annapolis, Maryland. It
Yeah.
just doesn't exist. Don't you know, Becky? And I'm like, well, don't you know it does? And as it turned out, I mean, I was killing it. I was selling, 20, 25 vehicles a month. And that was a lot considering the fact this was all subprime business. This is
Yeah.
something that they never did before
Yeah.
ever. And so that's kind of where we're at, right? Where, at the time it was like, Becky, we don't do that. That's not
Mhm.
kind of the business we do. We don't do any of that subprime stuff.
Yeah,
And
they opened up satellite lots. They didn't want those customers in the dealership. Like you, back then my moniker was the credit doctor. And the first time I made six figures in the car business, and I was trying to, separate myself from all the other competition for prospects, it was in subprime, and I helped. Listen, I take a lot of pride in the people that I helped back then. All right, because let's face it, transportation is important in the lives of families and people. So, but yeah, I remember those days.
it was, I'll never forget a time in my consulting days. Well, I'm still in consulting days, but back
Sure.
when I was working in Black Earth, Wisconsin, of all places. I don't know if y'all know where Black Earth, Wisconsin was, but or is. And here's this Chrysler dealership. They're killing it with subprime. There's 60 cars a month doing deals at subprime, and I was
Yeah.
convincing the other dealer down the street, "Are you kidding me? Of course you wanna get into this."
Yeah.
So it's just not as difficult as it seems, and this is kind of where I'm at right now. This is kinda here we are again, and I'm like, "Refi? That's a no-brainer." Why
Yeah.
aren't we making sure that if in the event a customer can't afford a $50 or a $100 difference in a payment,
Mhm.
Well, first of all, why are we there to begin with, right? And that's what you're
Right.
going to talk about. Why
Right.
are we even there? When
Right.
we can get to that sooner rather than later. And then
Sure.
also, while we can get to that sooner or later, we can determine whether they have an existing auto loan. And if they do, that they're not trading in, if we could possibly refi that so that way they can afford the new car payment. Why aren't we
Sure.
doing this stuff in advance? Why? Is it I can't be the only one thinking through this.
Well, and again, we were referencing our subprime, days. Out of all the subprime lenders, that came into business at that time, it caused the traditional lenders and captives to rethink those customers and rethink the business. And I think they're going to be in the same position now. So again, I think it's going to be about retention and some of the challenges we have and the difference between losing a customer or holding on to a customer and kind of earning their business through the next potential cycle or trade, is going to be the opportunity to do things like that. It's going to take a real much eye-opening from big groups and lenders and captives and things like that, to embrace that. But I think it will be, it's just going to be necessary.
Well, here's the first thing I want to say. You guys that are listening up, and hopefully you are listening up because this is really important. I mean, we're trying to impact sales today. And also, as John Ward points out, a better overall customer experience, shorten the time it takes to go ahead and put
Sure.
these deals together. So let's talk about what does Select F&I, FI, what exactly how does that work? What do you do? What's
Well,
the technology?
sure. So the SelectFI solution, all right. So SelectFI is our company, and SelectFI, our lender selector, is our first solution. But we saw it as a way to both protect the integrity, the desking integrity, and the lender selection integrity of transactions in the store, protecting the dealer from exposure, all right, keeping them compliant. You and I and several other people in our circle have been talking about, the way the FTC has gotten in people's pockets the last 2 or 3 years, and that's not going to change. That's not going to go away. So the SelectFI solution is designed, number one, to kind of protect, again, the desking integrity, the lender selection integrity. At the same time, knowing a lot of the kind of the, I don't know, the challenges that happen in the sales process. All right. For salespeople, getting certain information and offering that transparency to the customer. We know at a certain point, all right, when the customer is interested in a car, all right, whether they've come in off of an ad or something they saw on the internet, they're going to want to discuss payment. They're going to want to discuss rate. They're going to discuss terms and options. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to improve that sales to desk flow, all right, and make sure that when it comes time to pencil that first deal, that we don't have sales managers that are inconsistent in their treatment of the customer, that we're not shotgunning deals, floor qualifying customers, because in the recent settlements that have been made between the FTC and dealers, it's been about that. It's been about discrimination and unfair practices and fees. And so we're trying to protect the integrity of that process. But at the same time, we're trying to give that customer the information they want to make a comfortable decision quicker. All right. And we want to put the best potential option for the store and for the customer in front of them the first time. So our solution, the AI science behind it, basically does a soft pull. It does a complete credit bureau review. It takes a look at the LTV. It submits that to your lenders. All right. So we do it to your lenders. So whatever the captive and the area banks and credit unions you're using. So it submits that in seconds. By the time the salesperson gets to the desk, there are already pre-qualified approvals, complete with rate, complete with term, your maximum back end potential, any program details, There are subprime approval alternatives. All right. If the customer, if that's the best the customer is going to qualify for. All right. And it's all based on really a very short process of information collection that the salesperson takes. All right. And submits through the portal. And again, seconds later, you've got the best option. All right. And the best lender selection, the best program to put in front of your customer. So that's what the solution accomplishes. There are all kinds of other things process wise. I mean, when it comes to gross, it makes a big difference in the gross, because again, it's showing you're not just the best affordability to the customer, the best qualified approval, but it's also showing the maximum front end and profit, back end profit. So you've got all that at your fingertips. And so when you put that information in front of a sales manager or a GSM or a desk manager, they don't really have any other choice but to present it. And that's obviously at the point the customer says yes, that's the deal you're going to submit. And you've got an approval coming because it's already been pre-qualified and pre-approved.
Okay. So that's a lot right there to take in. So, okay. So here I am I'm wearing my dealer hat now.
Sure.
And my experience dealer hat, I think.
Sure.
And I remember back in the day, they called it track houses. And this was something, it was like a freaking bullpen is what it was. I can't even believe I'm talking about it. But anyway, so basically you ended up, the way it worked was you got the customer, you walk them through the dealership to the end, and you got like a 3-liner or 5-liner or whatever, as much information as you could. You gave it to the guy at the desk. You went around and you showed the customer on a car, put him on a car, any car would do, and you come back. And by the time that all happened, they had enough information. They pulled, sure, it was a hard inquiry at the time, but needless to say, it was done. And they knew, or the desk understood how to manage this deal, right? And they weren't shooting necessarily in the dark. Is that pretty much this? Is that pretty much how this works? But it's more.
Well, no, it's a vast improvement on that, because again, the salesperson gets to focus on, all right, the customer's motives. I mean, customers do things for their own reasons. They're at the dealership for their own reasons. The customer obviously has, their own DNA, a dominant natural action, a way that they like to buy things or they intend to buy things. And it allows you to focus on that. You don't have to stop the process to fill out a credit app. All right. So you can focus on, again, you're going to qualify the customer a little bit just in terms of a normal customer, salesperson to customer interview. But basically, after you've chosen the car, so you've showed the car, you've demoed the car, you come back, and like salespeople would enter information into a CRM, instead they're entering it into the SelectFI portal. All right. And
right. So it's more like it's a soft pull. You're gathering some information.
It is a soft pull, but there's a more complete review and more complete deal qualifying information that's kind of contained in it. So it can be at that point, the process can transition to a lot of different things. A salesperson can submit it. All right. Right then and there, he's got the inventory on it. He's got the trade in there. He's got all the numbers in there. He can submit it. It's saved when he submits it. The desk manager pulls it up, looks at it in the queue. All right. And he basically sends back the salesperson, all right, the qualified offer, the pre-approved qualified offer. All right. So that's one way to do it. Depending on the process in the store and how somebody runs.
No, it's just, I don't mean to cut you off, but I'm just trying to have my head wrapped around this. So, okay. So is this, okay. So as we're talking through this or interview process between me, the salesperson, and the customer, I'm gathering information.
Sure.
As I'm gathering that information is being communicated to the desk manager.
Absolutely. It's
simultaneously.
As you're inputting it and saving it, all right, it already goes into the queue. You can actually,
it's already going into the queue. It's already selecting, like, let's say Pro Max. So it's selecting the lender options based off of the information that it's pulling to determine what type inventory, based on our inventory, what unit would be the best based off of this particular customer and
Yeah,
lender.
in this particular scenario, the customers come in on a unit, so they've chosen a unit, all right? Based on the normal interview you would do in a sales process with the customer, you're trying to pre-qualify, them on that unit, all right? But this kind of shortens the process in that the very same information you would put into a CRM or updating a CRM on your customer is going into the SelectFI portal, all right? And you, at that point, a salesperson could actually submit it right then and there for lender pre-qualification and pre-approval. Or he can save it and the sales manager opens up the queue and he sends it right then and there. And seconds later, he's got 4 to 5 to 6 pre-qualified pre-approvals, different rates, different terms, different back-end maxes.
Yep.
So
this is not a hard inquiry. This is all based off of a soft pull and lender availability based off of that. So you have lending tier options that the dealer has access to.
Yes. So our particular solution, as well as looking at a score, it does a complete credit review. There's an LTV. Obviously, it's evaluating all the different ingredients in that particular deal submission. All right. But again, within seconds, you've got 5 to 6 pre-qualified pre-approvals from your lenders. All right. And you're able to present the very best one to your customer right then and there, first time. So, and again, instead of shotgunning deals and rehashing deals and going through that in the normal process of what happens in submitting, all right, and trying to close customers, all right, this is a much more streamlined. Again, it moves closer to the transparency that customers want and now expect, and just makes it more of a frictionless, sale.
Okay, so I'm trying to understand because I have not seen this. I haven't seen it. I'm getting like an idea behind it.
Yeah, I sent
So
you a demo.
I'm sorry.
I sent you a demo.
Well, you did. I did look at that. I did. I'm sorry. But
That's okay.
I did. Okay. So as the customer and the sales associate are working hand in hand, that customer is actually coming in from a particular vehicle that they have made a decision to buy. Is that correct?
Yeah, just like in a normal process, just like in a normal sales process.
Okay. So I come in because I'm looking at a particular vehicle. I'm here now. From there, we gather that information to be able to pull or do some sort of do that soft pull that provides the customer or provides the dealership or the desk with the options that the customer likely would qualify for, similar to what maybe a ProMax would do.
Yes. It also, in that pre-qualified pre-approval, it's also showing you, income qualification. If for some reason to qualify for that best rate or in that best payment, they want to see a little bit more down payment. All of those elements are going to be contained in those pre-approvals you're going to look at.
Great. So they want based off the income, based off of how that comes back, then the dealer is pretty much looking for additional down payment options.
If the lender requires it. So if you're taking a look at a particular pre-approval and program that you think it's going to be more advantageous to the customer, and or to the store, all right, in terms of the structure of the deal, and it asks you for $800 more down payment, you're going to see that.
Yeah.
And you're also going to see all the pre-qualified pre-approvals based on the exact way you submitted it.
So so it's a lot more intelligent rather than trying to shotgun these deals, take a shot, kind of figure things out on our own, and then at least having a lot more having other leads opportunity that maybe we didn't think about at the desk. How many times does that happen?
Well,
I got to tell you,
it happens a
yeah.
lot, and I can tell you that because again, I spent years and years and years up on, at the desk and on that tower. So number one, in the average, let's just say in the average 300 unit store, you probably have 5 sales managers and a GSM, and that's without a financial delivery person jumping up there to help you on any given business day. So all those people are looking at deals differently. All right. They
Amen.
have a lot of different influences. All
Mm-hmm,
right. I mean,
mm-hmm.
they might be sending it to somebody that bought the sales team pizza last Friday. All right. Or they might not be submitting a customer to a certain lender because yesterday they had 3 turndowns from that lender. So each person kind of has their own pool of experience and their own influences that causes them to submit a deal differently. And that's just the reality of what takes place.
Amen. It does. It's inconsistent. We're dealing with
Yeah.
inconsistencies at the desk, just like sometimes the inconsistencies in F&I. It's just like we're human. Ben,
Yeah.
you're right. We have a salesperson who asks us to work a deal with no money down. Go ahead and do it anyway,
Yeah.
boss. I mean, I'm just telling you right now, customer has no money down. And oh, by the way, make sure you extend it out to 84 freaking months for me too
Yeah.
while we're at it. And how many
Yes.
times does that never work out? And then we find out, oh, wouldn't you know it? Well, I thought you told me the customer had the right type of income. And meanwhile, you forgot to tell me he was self-employed. And,
Right.
the headaches, that's how the headaches start. And
Right.
so, or you always go to that desk manager who knows that you think will work the deal the way that you want to
Right.
work the deal. And that always undermines performance every single time. And so,
We've also
go
got
ahead.
some other interesting aspects of the development right now. One of them will be that in the near future, if there are any STIPs involved, the customer can submit the STIFs through the SelectFI solution, and they go directly to the lender. All right. So there's a
Yeah.
lot of different things. We've got some interesting reporting that's going to kind of geo target the lenders in the market, and how they're buying deals, and whether or not you're getting that best your fair slice of that business on any given month. I mean, there's going to be a lot of interesting aspects of it that are in development right now. But
Hmm.
I can also tell you that the reason I'm personally excited about it, was passionate about it, because you know, in my capacity in these different groups and different roles, I've had to work with people to create, that best practice sales process, that best practice desking process, that best practice submission process. I mean, we've all been in that struggle if we've worked in stores and been part of those teams. And in a couple of stores, I also helped create and implement the first ever group-wide sales training. And I can tell you that when I would train and have salespeople from different stores in the training, no 2 stores sales process was the same. No 2 desk the same. Salespeople would tell me about the differences in the way that sales managers desked deals, all right, and handled that process. And a lot of what we trained salespeople on was just to be more self-sufficient. And I think this process, to the benefit of the store and the customer, helps accomplish that more. Because there's nothing worse than having a customer and heading to the tower and finding out you're stacked up with other salespeople. All right. And you've got somebody that has a small window of time, because let's face it, we're earning the customer's time and attention, 15 minutes at a time. So they've got a small window of time, and you can't get them the information they need to say yes. We've all, as a salesperson, we've all dealt with that frustration. So
Oh,
this,
amen. I mean, I had another blog I wrote some time ago about brooming, how salespeople have a tendency to broom these customers. And the reason why is because of the frustration at the desk. And time after
yeah,
time after time, it has, it's been this way. It's like, I don't want to deal with that sales manager at the desk. Can't you
yeah,
get yourself a real customer or the F&I person?
yeah,
And meanwhile, I'm a salesperson, and I've been with this customer for 3 hours only to
yeah,
find out, you know, it's a pain. And so wouldn't that make, hey, maybe we're not brooming as many customers, and don't think that that's
absolutely.
not happening still. What do you
Well,
think about that?
well, and again, this isn't to be critical of sales managers because I am one and they're rock stars. All right. But we're human.
I don't know if they're
All
all
right.
rock stars.
Well, I've worked with a lot of rock stars. I've been mentored
I
by a
have
lot of
too. I'm
really
just saying they're
talented
not
guys.
all rock stars. There's
Well,
and
and
here's the other thing
some,
that I'm going to throw out there, and I know you're not going to like this. I'm going to just say it, and I know I get in trouble every time. But some of this talent in the last couple years, it has eroded the skill set. Every time we have
sure.
success, it's like, hey, what happened, to some of this skill set? And I think it's eroded over time. I really do.
Well, and I'll be honest with you. I haven't really, I haven't bumped into that much, other than stores that don't invest a lot in training. If they're not investing in training, if they're not investing in preparation, all right, with from the salesperson to the desk and to the delivery, then maybe obviously it's suffered for those reasons. But I haven't really bumped into a lack of talent. I have obviously seen people that haven't been invested in like they should have, and they get thrown into the trenches, and they struggle a little bit. And I think that's just part and parcel of that dynamic.
I
But
think some of these people have had it. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, let's face it. One price. This is my price. Take it or leave it out the door. Next. And I think we've had a lot of that too. And then F&I. I think F&I, frankly, are in many cases, some of these guys are order takers. They take the deal from the
right,
desk. The desk person says, "This is how we do it." And meanwhile, where's the validation? What's going on with this deal? Who's
right,
validating anything?
right.
And
Well,
sometimes I
well,
don't necessarily take a deal on its, because it came a certain way from the desk. I've always been the one that, hey, if there's a better way to put this deal together, that's my job to make that deal better and to put more
what if
profit on the
we
books.
took a large part of that away from your job and just allowed you to feature and benefit your products because you have an approval that allows for X amount of these products and that back end profitability. So that's what you can focus on. You don't.
So
And, and
are you more inclined? Okay, and I'm good with that. And I'm good with that. There, I'm going to have A to Z Sync is
Mhm,
coming on to one of the lives soon.
mhm,
And I believe Natasha's coming on maybe next week, or the
mhm,
week after. It's the week after. It's not next week. But
sure.
A to Z is very unique in that they really are all about the single sales associate approach.
Mhm, mhm,
And it seems to me that what you offer and aligning that customer with the right lender at the desk could
mhm,
actually work hand in hand with that A to Z type
mhm.
approach. Can you talk a little bit about that? And I know it's
Well,
kind of like uncomfortable for some F&I people to
well,
hear what's happening, but what are your thoughts
that's
there?
that's my that's my vision for it, my personal vision for it. That's my vision for it. Now, I'm also, I'm an older dude, so
No.
I was mentored, and obviously in the car business of long ago, when basically you went to the desk and they threw a bunch of papers at you and sent you back, and and wanted you to get $1,000 more and $200 more in a monthly payment. But I've also watched very successful forward-thinking dealers. There's a dealer in Jackson, Michigan. It's Extreme Dodge, and what you just described in A to Z is a process that he created, and that was without the benefit of the technology that exists now. He just thought that the salesperson, once they earned that customer's trust, once they established that they understood the customer's motives and they cared about them, then they were the best person to complete that transaction from A to Z. All right. And that included delivering the customer, presenting back end products, you know, and once upon a time, when I started out in sales, that's the way it was done. an F&I manager hung the deal, and then it got typed in the office, and then a salesperson delivered it. They would type it two ways. They type it one way fully loaded and the other way not.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
had 20 different versions of the deal in your folder when you took it to the customer. But I just, again, you heard me talk about self-sufficiency. I'm a huge fan of sales managers. I was one, but I know even the best intentioned sales managers aren't necessarily available at the point in the process when they're really needed, because they're pulled in a lot of different directions, and there's so many unplanned for things that happen in the course of the day, and servicing those customers. So I think this moves towards what you just described.
So how many stores are you in right now?
3.
Okay.
We just
And,
we just
yeah.
we test drove it for 90 days, and then we had our first group and first legacy partner, and they're an Oklahoma dealer group, and we've launched now in those stores.
And okay, so you did the launch or pilot for how long?
90 days.
90 days. Okay. And how did that all work? I mean, so is it help to impact the F&I front end
Yeah,
performance,
it's
F&I
impacted
performance?
everything. It's impacted everything from the sales to desk flow. It's impacted the customer experience. It's impacted, obviously, the front end and back end profitability. It, again, is protecting from a compliance standpoint, protecting the integrity of that deal, and decreasing the exposure on inconsistencies that take place with desking, can take place with desking. So in all those areas, it's vastly improved. This particular group has both domestic and import luxury stores, and the stores, their processes are a little bit different. So in in 2 of the stores, you've got older school sales managers, and they were big on control. To them, control is a necessary component of the sales process, and so they had to, in the words of En Vogue, they had to free their mind a little bit, but they did, and it's been a huge improvement in the store.
Well, that's great. I know that Chris Martinez speaks very highly of you, and I know that you're in his stores and doing really well. And, I'd like to always think that I'm willing to look at anything and anything that
Mhm.
can help to create more efficiency, especially for me. And I do. I mean, for years, I work from the time that customer lands on that dealership website. When I say that, what does that mean?
Sure,
Engaging with that BDC. What does that
sure.
mean to that salesperson, and how that whole thing comes together from sales to desking? And
Hmm.
let's just say it, what it is. I mean, the reality of it is, and this is a conversation I always have with dealers. If you don't get that desk right, that is the hub
Hmm.
of the dealership. I mean, that really is it. And if you're providing the golden keys to that desk,
Hmm.
I mean, you got to make sure that they're performing at a higher level.
Sure.
Right, and they have high integrity. It used to be years ago, and again, I'm gonna just it was. I mean, F&I protected the dealership assets. You're
Absolutely.
turning it around, and now you're saying the desk is protecting the dealership assets.
Yes.
That has got to work right, and we have to be above board. And consistency in that pencil is huge in my book. It is
Well, and
absolutely everything I live and breathe for.
it's not just about, FTC fines and the loss of profitability either. I mean, if you think about all the time and energy and the science that has gone into understanding reputation management, that it's as important to protect your reputation, all right, and your brand, as it is, your gross and your profit. So, I mean, just in the last couple months, every day you turn on the news and there's a restaurant being shut down because they were taking tips from from a server, and you're hearing about inequity and discrimination and appraisals of homes, all right, and mortgage approvals. So, when you go through an audit like that, all right, I mean, it doesn't take long for it to catch like wildfire in the media. And so forgetting whatever that fine could be, all right, the dent to your reputation, I mean, it can take you years and years and years and years of branding and marketing to bounce back from that.
So you're thinking your technology is going to make it so that way you're consistent in your pencil, and that you're not discriminating one pencil from another,
It absolutely does. It
right?
protects the integrity and compliance on that selection, all right, on that pencil, right from the very first pencil. All right, because there is no, the proprietary nature of the solution itself is what submits and then qualifies and selects. And the selection and that in that way, it's a human selection because you've got your pre-qualified pre-approvals there. All right. But with all that information in front of you, who would choose anything other than the best opportunity to close a customer right then and there and get a yes? Who would choose an option, that would take you leaps and bounds away from a yes? That's nobody's goal. So when it submits it and that you've got complete fairness, all right, in that submission, you've got integrity in that submission, all right, and those pre-approvals come back, then that choice, that first choice to present to the customer is very easy to make.
Okay, so as that information comes to the desk, and the only reason I think of this as almost like a Promax. So it takes
Sure.
that information, dials it in based off the customer credit criteria and the best. Well, if they're on a particular unit,
Mhm.
I'm thinking, what happens if in fact that's the wrong unit? I would imagine that it offers different options, maybe.
Yeah, if yeah, well, so for instance, okay, so if for instance, based on the approval, okay, and the affordability of the approval, and how closely it meets the customer's goals and motives, all right, and if you have to go back and switch, you have to go back and switch. I mean, that's what you have to do. So you're obviously you're going to attempt to give the customer what they want and get the closest to what's best for them and what we know will allow them to make a comfortable decision. That's our goal. But if for some reason we can't accomplish that, we're going to know that instantly. We're going to we're not going to know it from one lender. We're going to know it from 5 or 6 lenders. All right. So again, in what I think in my feelings are, is that at all points, at all potential crossroads in that sales process, it's going to eliminate, all right, a lot of what holds up the process for the customer and for the salesperson for the desk. So that's the way I see it.
Okay. So this is all happened. Okay. So the customer has selected a vehicle online.
Mhm.
So they come into the dealership and
Mhm.
they're meeting with the salesperson. And of course, the salesperson is submitting some of the rest of the information, and that is being communicated with the desk manager
Right through the portal. So when you go into
simultaneously through the portal.
right when you go into the portal, you're
Now, is the
putting
portal on a desktop or is it
yeah.
on a
Yeah,
iPhone? Where is it
it's
at?
on the salesperson. It's on the salesperson's desktop. But it could
Okay.
be it could also be accessed by a tablet. It could be be accessed by a mobile device.
Okay.
So it can be accessed in any of those ways. But the portal is on the desktop. Again, think of the process that takes place when the customer comes in, where you're inputting information into the CRM. Okay, once they've chosen the car, right? So at the point that the average salesperson approaches the desk, all right, for the first pencil, usually the first thing that the sales manager is going to want to know is the customer's credit. All right, that's what they're going to want to know. So unless they have a process, all right, that generates that out of the CRM, okay, and also submits it, which I'm not aware of any, okay, then this streamlines the whole thing, because you're basically going to go in the portal, you're picking the vehicle with a stock number, you're picking the vehicle from your inventory, all right?
Mm-hmm.
You're putting in pertinent information like the trade, a trade payoff, what the customer intends to put down, all right? And then you can, at that point, if you're in an online selling department, if you're in the online selling area of a BDC, or if you're a salesperson at your desk, the customer, you can submit it right then and there. And by the time you get to the desk, that sales manager can look at the pre-qualified pre-approvals in that queue. He sees them right then and there.
Amen. So he can know at this point, well, let me tell you something, dude, you're on the wrong car, or here's some options, and pencil the deal back based off on reality, on what's really happening, right? As opposed to guessing at it.
Sure.
So that's kind of cool. So
I think so.
okay, and that's before we go ahead and do the test drive, that sort of thing.
Sure.
Okay. Well, that's kind of cool. So,
And it can be before, it can be after, it can be, if you've had a conversation with the customer, an extensive